You're actually a lizard person. What?
What happens when America's sweetheart meets Hollywood's most unpredictable late-night host, and things spiral completely out of control? This is the story of one of the most talked-about moments in late-night television. The night Jennifer Aniston walked onto Jimmy Kimmel Live expecting a light, friendly chat, and instead found herself in the middle of a verbal standoff that had audiences frozen in disbelief and social media exploding for weeks. The energy inside the studio was electric as Jennifer strode onto the familiar stage, radiant in a sleek black blazer, her trademark smile lighting up the room. The crowd roared with excitement as she took her seat, clearly expecting another fun conversation about her latest film. Jimmy, dressed in his usual dark suit and flashing his signature mischievous grin, seemed unusually fired up, his expression hinting that something unexpected was coming. As the applause faded, Jimmy leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting. "Jennifer Aniston, everybody," he said, with a tone that felt oddly loaded. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," she replied smoothly, adjusting her blazer. But there was a faint tension in her shoulders, like she could already sense trouble brewing. Jimmy began flipping through his note cards with exaggerated slowness. "I have to ask you about something that's been making headlines," he said, letting the pause hang a beat too long. "There's been some chatter about your comments on method acting, how some actors take it too far." Jennifer's smile tightened just slightly. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," she said calmly. "I've always been supportive of all kinds of acting styles." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because there's a video making the rounds where you seem, let's say, a little less supportive. You said some actors lose themselves completely and make things difficult for everyone else on set." The audience shifted uneasily. What started as light banter was turning into something sharper. Jennifer's practiced composure didn't falter, but her tone cooled. "I think you're taking that out of context. I was speaking about professionalism, not individuals." "Were you, though?" Jimmy pressed, reaching for a tablet on his desk. "Because I have the clip right here and it sounds pretty specific." The crowd fell silent. Jennifer shifted in her chair, crossing her legs again. This was not the easy, polished interview she'd expected. "I'd rather not rehash comments that were twisted by the media," she said firmly. "I thought I was here to talk about my new project, not to be ambushed with gossip from months ago." Jimmy grinned wider, his tone turning smug. "Ambushed? Jennifer, come on! It's late-night TV. We talk about what's making headlines. I'm just giving you a chance to clear the air. My words don't need clarification for anyone who actually listened to the full interview instead of reading clickbait," Jennifer snapped, her patience wearing thin. The crowd gasped softly. Jimmy raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay, let's talk about your new project. But first, since you brought it up, there are reports your comments were aimed at a particular co-star, someone who apparently took their method acting so far it caused tension on set. Is that true?" The air in the studio turned heavy. Jennifer froze for a long moment before responding, her voice suddenly ice-cold. "I think you've crossed a line, Jimmy. This isn't journalism, it's tabloid bait. And I'm not playing along." Jimmy leaned back, clearly enjoying the friction. "Jennifer, you made the comments. I'm just asking questions. Isn't that what a good interviewer does?" Her eyes flashed. "A good interviewer doesn't blindside guests with false narratives," she fired back. "A good interviewer has a conversation, not an interrogation." By now, the once cheerful crowd was dead silent, caught between fascination and disbelief. The charm that usually defined Jennifer's interviews had vanished, replaced by a steely resolve that silenced even Jimmy's smirk. What began as a friendly reunion between two TV icons had turned into a rare, raw confrontation, one that revealed the fine line between entertainment and exploitation. And for everyone watching, it was clear. This wasn't just another late-night moment. It was a breaking point. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. The audience exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. Even the production crew in the background looked visibly shaken, shifting nervously as they realized this wasn't just another late-night moment. It was a meltdown, unfolding live. Jimmy Kimmel, sensing he might have gone too far, tried to steady himself. But instead of backing down, he pushed harder. "Look, I'm just trying to get to the truth here," he said, feigning calm. "Your fans deserve to know what really happened." Jennifer Aniston's voice sharpened, her composure cracking for the first time that evening. "The truth?" she repeated, leaning forward. "The truth is that I came here to talk about a project I care about. And instead, I'm being dragged through some twisted version of investigative gossip based on rumors and half-truths." The room fell silent. The confrontation was spiraling, and everyone, crew, audience, even the band, could feel something unprecedented building. This wasn't just celebrity tension. It was personal. "You know what, Jimmy?" Jennifer continued, her voice slicing through the air. "Since you're so eager to talk about truth, let's talk about the real truth of what's going on here." Jimmy's smirk faltered for the first time. "I'm not sure what you mean by that," he said, his voice quieter now. "Oh, I think you do," she shot back, her eyes blazing. "This isn't about some old interview or my comments on acting. This is about ratings. It's about creating a viral moment, at my expense." The color drained slightly from Jimmy's face, but he forced a laugh. "That's not fair, Jennifer. I'm asking legitimate questions about statements you made publicly." Jennifer gave a short, humorless laugh. "Legitimate questions, please. I've been doing interviews for 30 years. I know the difference between journalism and cheap theatrics. And what you're doing right now is the latter." The power in the room had shifted. Jimmy fidgeted in his seat, trying to regain control. "I think you're overreacting," he said, his tone defensive. "These are normal follow-ups. Normal?" Jennifer's voice rose, clear and cutting. "Normal would be asking me about my new show, my co-stars, my work, like every other guest who sits here. What you're doing is turning this into a tabloid ambush." Phones came out across the audience. People were recording, knowing instinctively that they were witnessing a moment that would dominate headlines. Behind the cameras, producers were panicking, uncertain whether to cut to commercial or let the chaos play out. Jimmy tried to laugh it off, but the sound rang hollow. "Come on, Jennifer. You're being a little dramatic. I ask tough questions. That's what people tune in for." "Tough questions?" Jennifer repeated, standing abruptly. The audience gasped. There's a difference between tough questions and character assassination, between holding someone accountable and trying to humiliate them for entertainment. Jimmy blinked, stunned. He hadn't expected this. The woman in front of him wasn't just a movie star, she was a storm. "Jennifer, please," he said, gesturing toward the chair. "Sit down. Let's talk about this like adults." Her voice carried across the room, fierce and unwavering. "Adults? Adults don't ambush people they call friends on national television. Adults don't chase controversy to get clicks and laughs. Adults respect boundaries," Jimmy exhaled sharply. "We're not friends, Jennifer," he said flatly. "This is business. I'm a host. You're a guest. That's the job. Sometimes tough topics come up." The audience gasped audibly. Even by late-night standards, it was a brutally honest and tone-deaf remark. Jennifer stared at him, her expression shifting from anger to disbelief, and then to something that looked almost like heartbreak. "Wow," she said finally, her voice quieter but laced with steel. "Okay, well, at least now we're being honest about what this really is." Jimmy hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I mean that for years," she said, her tone heavy but controlled. "I've come on this show thinking we had mutual respect. I've promoted my work here. I've played along with your sketches. I've laughed at your jokes. I've been nothing but professional. And tonight I realize I was never a guest. I was content. Content for you to use." Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but she didn't stop. Decades of Hollywood composure had given way to raw honesty. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be a woman in this industry?" she demanded. "To constantly fight to be taken seriously? To prove that you're more than a headline or a punchline? And then someone you trusted, someone who should know better, turns around and uses you as fuel for gossip. That's not entertainment, Jimmy. That's betrayal." Jimmy looked cornered, words failing him for the first time all night. "Jennifer, that's not what I'm doing," he managed weakly. But it was too late. The moment was already legendary. Jennifer Aniston, standing tall under the studio lights, calling out one of late night's biggest names on his own stage. And as the cameras kept rolling, the audience knew they weren't just witnessing a clash of personalities, they were witnessing a reckoning. Jimmy's voice wavered, his trademark confidence slipping away. "Then what would you call this?" Jennifer demanded, gesturing around the studio, dragging up old comments, twisting them out of context, confronting me with them on live television with no warning, refusing to let me talk about the work I actually came here to promote. For the first time all night, Jimmy looked completely lost. His trademark smirk was gone, replaced by visible unease. "I'd call it doing my job," he muttered weakly. Jennifer let out a disbelieving laugh. "Your job?" she repeated, her voice thick with incredulity. "Your job is to entertain, Jimmy, not to destroy. Your job is to bring joy to your audience, not to tear down the very people who make your show possible." The room crackled with tension. Camera operators zoomed in tight, capturing every flicker of emotion on their faces. This was no longer just an interview. It was a battle of ethics, playing out live before millions. Jimmy tried one last time to defuse the moment. "Jennifer, I think we're both getting a little heated here. Maybe we should just take a breath and start over." Jennifer's glare could have cut glass. "Start over?" she repeated coldly. "There's no starting over from this. You've shown me exactly who you are tonight, and you've shown your audience too. The real question is whether they're okay with that." She turned toward the crowd, her voice steady but powerful. "You all deserve better than this. You deserve hosts who lift their guests up instead of tearing them down. You deserve entertainment that doesn't come at the expense of someone's dignity." The audience was frozen, torn between applause and shock. Jimmy, realizing the moment was spiraling, tried to reel it back. "Jennifer, please, let's talk about your new project. That's what you came here for, right?" Her eyes flared. "Now you want to talk about my project? After spending 15 minutes trying to destroy my reputation? After making it clear that you see me as nothing more than content to boost your ratings?" "That's not true," Jimmy protested, his voice thin and defensive. "Isn't it?" she shot back. "Then explain why every question tonight was designed to make me look bad. Explain why you ambushed me with gossip instead of having a real conversation. Explain why you think this is acceptable behavior." The air in the studio was suffocating. Even the hum of the lights seemed louder. Jimmy sat motionless, eyes darting toward the producers for help. For a long, unbearable moment, he said nothing. Then, against every instinct of self-preservation, he spoke. "Jennifer, I think you're taking this too personally," he said quietly. "This is just television. It's entertainment. People expect a little conflict. That's what makes good TV." The words hit like a punch. Jennifer froze, her posture stiffening. For a heartbeat, it looked like she might actually walk off the stage. But instead, she turned slowly back toward him, her tone ice-cold. "Just television," she repeated, her voice trembling with contained fury. "Entertainment? Do you hear yourself, Jimmy? You're talking about my life, my career, my reputation, as if it's some kind of game show prize to be tossed around for laughs." Jimmy knew immediately that he'd made a fatal mistake. But instead of apologizing, he leaned on the only defense he had left. "Look, Jennifer, we're both public figures. We both know how this works. Controversy gets views. I'm not doing anything every other talk show host doesn't do." Jennifer's expression softened for just a second, enough to reveal the hurt behind her anger. "And that makes it okay?" she asked quietly. "That makes it acceptable to humiliate someone you call a friend? To ambush me on national television?" Her voice cracked slightly, raw emotion cutting through her usual composure. "Jimmy, I've trusted you. I've come on this show for years. I've told other people this was a safe space. I defended you when people said you were going too far. And this is what you do with that trust?" The audience was transfixed. Some sat frozen, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Phones recorded from every angle. No one dared to interrupt. Jimmy tried to salvage the last shreds of control. "Jennifer, you're a professional. You've been in this business a long time. You know how it goes. Sometimes interviews get heated. Sometimes tough questions get asked. It's just the nature of the beast." Jennifer laughed, but there was no humor in it, only exhaustion and disbelief. "The nature of the beast?" she echoed. "Let me tell you what the nature of the beast really is." She began to pace, her words sharp and deliberate. "The nature of the beast is men in positions of power thinking they can treat women like disposable entertainment. It's hosts who believe their platform gives them the right to humiliate people for ratings. It's a system that rewards cruelty and calls it charisma." Every word landed like a hammer. The studio was utterly silent. Jimmy sat frozen, his eyes downcast, realizing too late that the moment had escaped him completely. Jennifer stopped pacing and looked directly into the camera. "You can call it entertainment if you want," she said quietly, "but I call it exploitation." And with that, she turned, thanked the audience for their time, and walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy Kimmel speechless, the crowd in stunned silence, and the internet about to explode. Jennifer's voice cut through the tense silence like a blade. "You want to know what really happened with those comments you're so obsessed with, Jimmy? Fine, let's talk about it." The audience shifted uneasily. Jimmy tried to speak, but she didn't give him the chance. "I was asked about working with difficult people, and I gave an honest answer about professionalism. I never named names. I never attacked anyone. I talked about boundaries and respect on set. That's it. But you—" She pointed sharply toward him. "You took those comments and twisted them into some scandalous exposé. You implied I was targeting people. You made me out to be the problem. You created chaos where none existed." Behind the cameras, producers were in panic mode, gesturing frantically to each other. The crew didn't know whether to cut to commercial or let the moment unfold. Even the band sat frozen, instruments untouched. Jimmy shifted uncomfortably, trying to regain control. "Jennifer, maybe we should take a quick commercial break, cool down, and come back to talk about your new project." Jennifer's laugh was sharp, humorless. "A commercial break? Do you think this is a performance we can just pause and restart? Do you think my dignity, my reputation, my feelings are something you can just shelve between ads for soda and car insurance?" "That's not what I meant," Jimmy stammered, but she wasn't listening anymore. "You know what's really pathetic, Jimmy?" she said, her voice cold and steady now. "I actually felt sorry for you when I walked out here tonight. I could see it. That desperate look in your eyes. That hunger for a viral moment. That need to prove you're still relevant in a crowded field of late-night hosts." The color drained from Jimmy's face. "That's completely unfair, Jennifer." "Unfair?" she repeated, incredulous. "You want to talk about unfair? Unfair is using your platform to ambush someone you once called a friend. Unfair is trying to manufacture controversy at someone else's expense. Unfair is what you did to me tonight." She turned toward the audience, her tone shifting from fury to heartbreak. "I want all of you to remember this moment. Remember how easy it is for someone with power to tear another person down for entertainment value. Behind every celebrity, every headline, every viral clip, there's a real person with real feelings and real consequences." The room was so still, it was almost suffocating. Some audience members looked visibly shaken. Others filmed quietly, realizing they were witnessing television history in real time. Jimmy stepped forward, his voice trembling. Jennifer, please. I think we've both said things we didn't mean. Can't we just find a way to end this on a positive note? She turned back to him slowly, her eyes full of pity. Jimmy, the only positive thing that can come from this is if people learn something. If they finally understand that entertainment has limits, that there's a line between curiosity and cruelty. She reached for her purse, stood, and slung it over her shoulder with deliberate calm. I came here tonight to talk about a project I care about, to connect with your audience, to have a real conversation. Instead, I got an interrogation designed to humiliate me for ratings. Jimmy rose, too, panic flickering across his face. Jennifer, wait, please. We can fix this. She stopped mid-stride, turned back one last time, and said quietly, but with devastating finality, Jimmy, you can't fix this. You can't take back the questions, the implications, or the trust you broke. You can't undo the choice you made when you decided ratings mattered more than respect. The audience watched as Jennifer Aniston turned and walked toward the exit, each step echoing in the stunned silence of the studio. Jimmy called after her, his voice cracking, desperate, but she didn't look back. Jimmy, she said over her shoulder, I believe you're sorry, but not for what you did, only for how it made you look. You're sorry your audience got to see who you really are. The studio lights seemed harsher now, unforgiving. The cameras kept rolling as Jennifer Aniston, one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, disappeared backstage, leaving behind a host, a crew, and an audience who knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. For all the wrong reasons. Jimmy stood frozen at his desk, words failing him for once. The silence was heavier than any applause he'd ever heard. And in that silence, one truth hung unmistakably in the air. In his quest to create a viral moment, Jimmy Kimmel had made television history. But not the kind he would ever want replayed.